Firefox now serving ads? Mozilla says the new Booking.com ad on Firefox's new tab page was just another experiment. Also, in this edition of Taking Into Account, we're going to take a look back at 2018. We're going to take a look back at 2018 as far as snap packages. We're going to discuss the most popular snaps from the Snap Store in 2018. We're also going to take a look at the Linux kernel. The Linux kernel ended 2018 with almost 75,000 new commits last year alone. The game Bloodstained, they're dropping support for Mac and Linux users. They apologize to everyone that backed them on Kickstarter, especially Mac and Linux users that pledged them money because of supposed cross-platform support. Google will soon let you run Windows 10 on their new high-end Chromebooks. These are 5 stories that I will be taking into account. And the first story on the docket tonight is this bizarre story of Mozilla putting ads in their Firefox web browser again. Mozilla, I love Firefox, but they keep really screwing things up. This is another negative story about Mozilla. They've had a few in 2018. Anyway, so this story comes from VentureBeat.com. Mozilla ad on Firefox's new tab page was just another experiment. So, a few days ago, some Firefox users started seeing an ad in the desktop version of the Firefox browser. You started seeing a Booking.com ad, to find a hotel. Here in the screenshot on the article, you will see the ad here at the bottom of this new tab page. So, I guess it has this little tree sidebar. You see new tab. Anyway, at the bottom here, you see find a hotel with Booking.com. According to Mozilla, this was not really an advertisement, though. This was a bonus to Firefox users. This was a gift to you because, according to them, this ad was offering Firefox users a $20 Amazon gift card in return for booking your next hotel via Booking.com. Now, of course, that is a complete load of horse crap. Obviously, it's an advertisement. Mozilla saying they're doing it for us, that they really claimed that this was an advertisement. They really didn't get anything from Booking.com, which, they may not have. And it may actually be an experiment on their part, but it's an experiment to serve ads in the browser in the future. Anyway, according to the article here, we reached out to Mozilla, which confirmed the ad was a Firefox experiment and that no user data was being shared with its partners. So that's good for privacy reasons. They're not sharing any user data with their partners. Well, how can you not share user data with the ad partners? I mean, at the very least, the advertisers know, like IP and, just web analytics. They're going to know a little bit about you. I get where Mozilla's coming from, that no critical, private user data was shared with them. But obviously, anything that happens on the web, there are some web analytics, some stats, especially that the ad network receives. So there were 2 versions of this ad that appeared. Let me read you the ads. So, the experiments. The first experiment read like this. Ready to schedule that next family reunion? Here's a thank you from Firefox. Book your next hotel stay on Booking.com today and get a free $20 Amazon gift card. Happy holidays from Firefox. Restrictions apply. That's the first experiment. That's not an ad, that's an experiment. The second experiment read, for the holidays, we got you a little something just for using Firefox. Book your next hotel stay on Booking.com today and get a free $20 Amazon gift card. Happy holidays from Firefox. Restrictions apply. So that is the experiments, not the ads. That's the experiments. Now, of course, Firefox is not calling them ads, and they're not really calling them experiments either. They were calling these snippets, and they claimed that this snippet, quote, was an experiment to provide more value to Firefox users through offers provided by a partner. It was not a paid placement or advertisement. We are continually looking for more ways to say thanks for using Firefox. In a similar vein, earlier this month, we offered a Firefox users a free opportunity to enjoy a live concert from Phosphorescent. I don't remember that. Anyway, in addition to adding value to Firefox users, these efforts are intended to support an open ecosystem. When users see such offers, no data is being shared with a partner, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so again, they claim Booking.com didn't, give Mozilla any money for this ad run. No money changed hands here. But again, that's probably true. Firefox was probably just doing a test run with Booking.com. But again, even though they say it's not an advertisement, which I guess they can claim that if they didn't pay or they weren't paid by Booking.com, anything still, they're certainly getting ready to start serving ads in Firefox, and that is the fear from Firefox users, such as myself. I've been using Firefox since day one, since Firefox first arrived on the scene, after Netscape. But I do not want ads in my browser. I mean, that is really what killed the Opera browser years ago. Of course, Opera is still around, but many years ago, Opera was kind of like that third browser when you had Internet Explorer, Firefox, and then you had Opera. And I'm talking about like 15 years ago. Then Opera had this bright idea: we can't make any money. Maybe Firefox and Mozilla make a little money. Internet Explorer, of course, is tied into Windows, so it's Microsoft's making boatloads of money. What is Opera going to do? They're going to start serving ads in the web browser. And immediately, everybody just quit using Opera. And Opera really has never recovered since. I mean, Opera's still been around, but it's never been as popular as it once was because it was serving ads in the browser. Nobody's going to put up with that. Nobody put up with it with Opera. They're definitely not going to put up with it in a free and open source web browser like Firefox. I think that's why Firefox is so adamant. Hey, this is an ad. Was not an advertisement, guys. It's because the negative connotations that has. If you tell me you're going to start serving me ads in your browser, I'm not even going to install the thing. I don't even want to look at your browser if I know I'm going to be served ads inside the browser. And that's why they're really adamant. This was just an experiment. I hope it was just a one-time deal. Anyway. About 25% of the U.S. audience that used Firefox were eligible to see this ad, so about 1 in 4 saw this Booking.com ad. Me personally, I didn't see it running Firefox on Linux. Anyway, and the second story on the docket tonight are the top snaps in 2018. What were the top 10 snaps according to the Snap Store in 2018? Now, snap packages have become kind of one of the hot topics in the last year or two in Linux. It's these new distro-agnostic containerized packages such as Snappack, Flatpak, AppImage. And me personally, I think all three are great. They all work. I have all three types of packages installed on my system right now. Love snaps, love Flatpaks, love AppImages. I know there is some debate about the validity of these packages, the security of them. I have no problems with them. And this comes from the Ubuntu blog written by Alan Pope. Alan Pope, one of the creators of Snappacks. He wrote this on the 27th of December 2018. Top snaps in 2018. With 2018 drawing to a close, many of us spending time with family during the holidays, I thought we'd take a look back over some of our favorite Linux applications in the Snap Store. And by the Snap Store, he, of course, is talking about Snapcraft.io. You guys probably know Snapcraft. Anyway, the top 10 Snap Packs in 2018. The most downloaded were, number 1, Spotify. I think all of you guys know Spotify. It's a music service. It is not free and open source software, but that is the point of really one of the reasons why snaps and things like Flatpaks and AppImages are so popular is most Linux distros, Ubuntu included, they do not put any closed source proprietary software in their repos. You would never get Spotify in the Ubuntu repos. You're never going to be able to sudo apt install Spotify and pull Spotify down from an Ubuntu repo. It has to be some kind of third party package format that serves you these proprietary closed source programs like Spotify. And that's where something like Snap Package comes in. That's where, and previously you would probably use PPAs on Ubuntu systems, or on Arch-based systems you would use something like the Arch user repository, the AUR. And these are community repos. As community projects will package Spotify and put it in a community repo for everybody to get, but those things are not the most secure repos. Where the Snap Store hopefully is a bit more secure. We could debate on that, but anyway, the number 1 snap for 2018 was Spotify. Number 2 was Slack. Reading a little bit here. In a short time, Slack has become the ubiquitous collaboration tool among developers. With rich chat, featureful integration, and clients for any platform, Slack helps teams keep in touch. So there's Slack for you. Number 3, VLC. VLC, of course, is a very popular multimedia player, free and open source software. I install VLC on every single Linux installation of mine. If I was a Windows user, I would tell you right now, if I was a Windows user, I would still use VLC. There isn't a paid app, there isn't a closed source app that comes close to VLC. VLC is really one of the highlights of free and open source software. Love it. Number 4, another free and open source program, Nextcloud. Nextcloud, I love the fact that Nextcloud is available as a snap. I think I've mentioned this on some of my shows in the past, is I actually played with the Nextcloud snap, installed it on a Raspberry Pi, I've installed it on a couple of machines. So normally when you install something like Nextcloud on a Linux server, you have to set up a LAMP stack. That is Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP, a web server basically. And then sudo apt install Nextcloud, and then you have to configure the Apache server, and it may take half an hour to an hour to get all this set up. The great thing about snaps being a container, they contain Nextcloud, they contain all the Nextcloud dependencies, which include the LAMP stack, the web server, the Apache server, MySQL, all that. So a simple sudo snap install Nextcloud on a machine gets you Nextcloud with almost no configuration involved, where it might take you half an hour on a normal Ubuntu server or Debian server to get Nextcloud up and running. Sudo snap install Nextcloud, you're done. I love that aspect of snaps. I know not everybody loves the fact that every snap has all the dependencies for the app, but in some instances it makes a lot of sense. It really saves you a lot of time. Number 5, Android Studio. I don't know anything about Android Studio. It's for developing Android apps. It's an Android development environment that runs on Linux. Discord. Discord, again, it's not free and open source software, but I do like Discord. I use Discord. It's great for especially live chatting with folks, especially gaming. That's what I use it for. If I do like a gaming live stream and I want to interact with people in game and record it, and live stream it, I usually use Discord. It's a fine product. Plex Media Server. I believe Plex is free and open source software. Could be wrong, but I think it's GPL too. Anyway, relatively new to the Snap Store, currently in beta. Plex Media Server is a must for media hoarders. I haven't played with Plex myself. I should probably check it out. Xonotic. Xonotic is a fantastic free and open source first-person shooter. I've actually played this a few times on the channel. I've done a couple of live streams playing Xonotic. Matter of fact, I think one of the live streams I actually played against Alan Pope, who wrote this article. He wasn't very good at Xonotic. I'm not very good at Xonotic, so you're not going to see any great gameplay if you watch either one of us play Xonotic. Number 9, Notepad++. Really? A lot of people want Notepad++ on Linux? Okay. Anyway, number 10, Shotcut. Shotcut is a video editor. It's okay. It's not the greatest video editor out there, but it is not bad. It keeps getting better. It's a little buggy. Me personally, you guys know I use Kdenlive. If you're not adhering to free and open source software, DaVinci Resolve is available on Linux. I haven't played with it much, but I think it's only officially supported on Red Hat and CentOS as of now. But anyway, the top snap packs for 2018. And the third story on the docket tonight is the Linux kernel ends 2018 with almost 75,000 commits last year. Wow. So, one of the amazing things about Linux as far as the kernel is how many people actually work on the kernel, how many new commits are done every year, how many lines of code are added and removed every year. The Linux kernel is a massive project, and a lot of people work on it. Now, I would love to tell you it's all community-based, and it's mostly people volunteering time and doing free work on the kernel. Sadly, that's not the case. Most of it is actually done by people being paid. People being paid by large corporations that have, a lot of vested interest in the kernel. So you have a lot of Google employees, Intel employees, Microsoft, Red Hat, IBM now, Canonical, etc. Even car companies, Toyota, they have people on their payroll that they pay to work on the kernel for their own interests, of course. But, probably something like 70% of the work done on the kernel now is done by actual paid employees. So it's not really a community project anymore like it was in the early days, but that's part of the kernel. Is just too important to be left up to the community alone, I think. But anyway, that's another discussion. This article comes from Michael Larabelle over at Phoronix. And I quote, "As of this New Year's Eve afternoon, the Linux kernel saw 74,974 commits this year that added 3.3 million lines of code and removed 2.5 million lines of code." How does the 75,000 commits in 2018 compare? Is it a record for the Linux kernel team? No. The record for them, they had 80,725 commits in one of the previous years. Actually, in 2017, the year before 2018, of course, they had 77,000 commits compared to 75,000 commits in 2018. Now, do these things really matter? Do they tell a story? Is less work going on in the kernel? No, commits are not the whole story. Other things you might want to take a look at is the number of authors who actually contributed to the Linux kernel in 2018. Well, 4,208 detected authors in 2018. That was down a little bit from 2017, which had 4,400 different detected authors, but it was higher than 2016, which only had 4,043 detected authors. Does it mean much? I don't know. Who is who as far as these detected authors? Well, they can tell who works for what companies, usually by the email address, if their email address comes from a particular domain. So if we throw out everybody that just uses Gmail, because Gmail doesn't tell us anything, Intel continues to lead with the most commits by domain name as far as, who's using a intel.com, I guess, domain name. Nearly 6% of the commits were from Intel employees. 5.3% commits were from Red Hat employees. With the Linux kernel tree, there are currently 63,000 files that amount to around 26.1 million lines of code. Massive project. It is just insane. Really, it boggles the mind how big the Linux kernel is. It is just growing exponentially every year. That exponential growth is also why the article mentioned, they added 3.3 million lines of code this year, but they removed 2.5 million lines of code because the kernel size now is so massive. They're starting to remove a lot of the older code, the unnecessary code. They're starting to no longer support devices that there's no point in supporting anymore. So they're trying to clean up the kernel. As they're adding new things to the kernel, they're also trying to clean up some of the older code, get rid of some of the unnecessary bloat to the kernel. Anyway, that was the Linux kernel in 2018. And the next story on the docket tonight is there was this game called Bloodstained. I guess they had a Kickstarter campaign. And they promised to support Windows, Mac, and Linux. And as, most of us know on Linux, we don't have a lot of big-time AAA kind of games. So when somebody promises a Linux client, even me, I don't game. But you know what? If somebody's asking for support, asking for donations, asking for money, I might throw somebody a few bucks just to support Linux the cause, right? I want more stuff available on Linux. Because the more things like AAA title games are on Linux, the more people we're going to bring over from Windows and Mac, over to our side, over to Linux. So this story comes from Polygon.com. This was written by Charlie Hall. Bloodstained drops support for Mac and Linux, and they apologize to their backers. So, reading a little bit here from the article, quote, Bloodstained, Ritual of the Night, the side-scrolling action game from former Castlevania producer, whoever his name is, will no longer support Mac or Linux. The news comes shortly after the cancellation of the version for PlayStation Vita, a delay into 2019, and the addition of resources from Shantae series developers WayForward. So, Bloodstained, they start a Kickstarter campaign. We need money, and we're going to support all these different operating systems and console devices. And they got a lot of money. They raised more than $5.5 million from 65,000 backers on Kickstarter. That's massive, right? And then what did they do? Well, the game, we're not really going to release it in 2018 or even early 2019. We're pushing this thing back a little bit. Also, you know what? having Linux clients and Mac clients is a little harder than we thought. We're not going to support Mac or Linux. Sorry, guys. Sorry, all you Mac and Linux guys that gave us money. We apologize. Hope you have a Windows machine to play our game on. And of course, the cancellation of a version for PlayStation Vita. I'm not sure what that is. I'm not a gamer. But anyway, they basically pulled the rug out from under a lot of people that supported them over on Kickstarter. And I would like to say these kinds of stories are rare. They're not, though. For those of you that do these kind of crowdfunding sites, and I love sites like Kickstarter and Indiegogo, and people that start GoFundMe projects, and these kinds of sites serve a real purpose for people raising money for real causes, real products. But you do have to be careful, especially for those of us that run Linux. I've seen this a number of times now. I'm building a piece of software or I'm building a piece of hardware, and I really need some money, and you know what, I'm going to support every operating system known to man, including Linux. And I think some of these people know, the Linux crowd in particular, we're a different bunch, right? Because we are passionate. We're passionate about these kinds of causes, and we give money generously. We give more money on average for things than Windows users, Mac users. This has been proven. For those of you that know about the Humble Indie Bundle project that basically comes out every month or so, and was giving out these games for free, but if you wanted to, you could donate. Well, the Humble Bundle, they offered games that worked on Windows, Mac, and Linux, and on average, the Linux gamers donated more money per user than the Windows and Mac users. We're more generous. We give more freely because it's just the nature of our community. So these guys start these Kickstarter campaigns and promise Linux support because they know we're going to give them some money. I just mentioned I don't even game, but if I'd came across this on Kickstarter and I had a few extra bucks in my pocket, I might have donated to these guys, even though I probably would have never played the game. But them promising a Linux port, I would have gave them a few bucks because I think it's a worthwhile cause. And then you get the rug pulled out from under you. Again, this is not anything new. A matter of fact, it's becoming so common that especially game projects that start these Kickstarter campaigns, they don't get the kind of funding they used to. Reading the last paragraph of the article. The failure by Bloodstained and other high-profile video game projects to meet self-imposed deadlines, again, like delaying the release of your game for another year because you couldn't meet the deadline you promised in the Kickstarter campaign. Anyway, reading further, has led to a precipitous decline in video game funding on Kickstarter. Total funding fell from $42.5 million in 2015 to roughly $17 million for each of the last 2 years. So people have kind of wised up a little bit that when you donate to these video game projects, they rarely deliver what they promise. They often under-deliver. And the fifth and final story on the docket tonight is Google will soon let you run Windows 10 on that high-end Chromebook. This story comes from ZDNet, written by Stephen J. Vaughn Nichols. Windows is coming to your Chromebook. If there are a couple of Windows applications holding you back from using a Chromebook, Google will soon let you run Windows 10 on your high-end Chromebook. So it's been no secret now that Google has been working on making it possible to dual boot Windows 10 in particular, on the Chromebook since July of 2018. So they've been working on it about 6 months. Google recently made it possible to use Linux on your Chromebook in a fashion. I think you can actually use Linux and Chrome OS at the same time. I think you run one of them in like a chrooted environment or anyway, but you've never been able to dual boot Windows 10 with Chrome OS on a Chromebook, and now they're making that possible. According to the article, quote, this new dual boot mode will let Chromebook users with Intel processors and a minimum of 64 gigs of SSD and 4 gigs of RAM run Windows 10. It also appears as if dual boot, the offspring of Google's Project Campfire, will enable you to run other operating systems. So Google is making it possible to run other operating systems other than Chrome OS on the Chromebook. Here's the problem I have with this. Why are you trying to run Windows 10 on a Chromebook, guys? and I'm being dead serious, Chrome OS, of course, is a Linux-based operating system, kind of lightweight operating system to run on these machines that, quite frankly, are really underpowered. Chromebooks, they're not high-spec machines. You could run Chrome OS on it fine, and you could run many versions of GNU/Linux on it just fine. Windows 10 is going to run like a dog, even on the higher-end Chromebooks. I just don't see the point. And Stephen J. Von Nichols here in the article also mentions, he doesn't mention that he doesn't see the point, but he does mention that most people probably need Microsoft Windows specific applications that they just can't get on Chrome OS or on Linux. The big elephant in the room, of course, is Microsoft Office. That's the one that always comes up. I've got to have Microsoft Office for work or school. Microsoft Office 365 in the web, in the web browser, works just fine on Chrome OS, on Linux, on any operating system. You don't have to run Microsoft Windows to use Microsoft Office 365, and I believe Microsoft Office 365 is free, at least initially, to get started. You don't even have to pay anything up front to get started using Office 365. If you have to have the standalone clients for Microsoft Office, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, all of that, I believe you've been able to do that on Chrome OS natively, at least for a little bit. I believe there was a way to do that. So again, if Office is what's keeping you from buying a Chromebook, you can do that in Chrome OS or install Linux on it and do it in Linux. So I don't see the need to run Windows 10 on a Chromebook. The other kind of software that typically holds people back from, something like the Chromebook or from switching to Linux, for example, would be gaming. These are Chromebooks. These are underpowered machines. You're not going to game on them. I guess maybe, in a year or two, some newer generations of Chromebooks will come out that will be somewhat capable of gaming, but these are not the kind of machines you buy to game on. So I think I don't hate the fact that Google is allowing people to dual boot Windows 10 on Chromebooks. I think it's fantastic that they're opening up their hardware in such a way. I just don't see a real need. I don't think very many people will choose to dual boot Windows 10 with Chrome OS on a Chromebook. And that was the fifth and final story for this edition of Taking Into Account. This was Taking Into Account episode 23. Taking Into Account is a series I do. I try to release a new episode of Taking Into Account every Thursday, sometime every Thursday. So look for Taking Into Account episode 24 sometime next Thursday. As always, before I go, I like to read a viewer question or comment. Most of the viewer questions or comments I typically read at the end of these programs come from those of you following me over on Mastodon. If you're not following me over on Mastodon, you really should. Get off of Facebook, get off of Twitter, come join me over on Mastodon. Today, the question or comment is not going to come from Mastodon. I got this question by at least a dozen different people over the last week, because those of you that have been following my channel know I recently switched to the i3 tiling window manager, and I made a video about my first day in i3, and I was having some problems. One of the problems I had was swapping workspaces. Now, what does that mean, swapping workspaces? Well, what I'm talking about is, let me open up a few windows here. So I'm just going to quickly open up, 3 terminals here. And we'll adjust the layout here. But anyway, how about I open up HTOP in that one, my file manager, VIFM in that one, and this one, how about CMUS? So I've got 3 programs open, all on workspace 1 here, right? And let's say on a different workspace, I have 3 other windows open, say on workspace 2 over here on the far left monitor. Now, normally in most tiling window managers, something like mod 2 would simply swap the workspaces. I would get workspace 2 with all its windows switched to the window I'm on now, and then all of these would swap to the opposite side. That is not really how i3 works. It doesn't have that swapping functionality. It seems like I will never get these 3 programs on a different monitor, at least not swapping workspaces. They're always going to be here. If I swap to the 3rd workspace, which I currently have VLC open on, VLC is still over on this monitor. It didn't swap over here. These didn't go over there. Nothing really happens. Just typing, the mod key plus 2 for the other workspace just takes me to VLC on the second workspace. It doesn't actually swap the monitors, which is a little strange. That's not how really any other tiling window manager I've used functions, so it's a different kind of workflow, something I've got to get used to. Some of you were a little confused what I was talking about as far as swapping workspaces. That's what I'm talking about, is there's no way for you to swap exactly what's going on 2 different monitors for them to swap with all the windows. And every tiling window manager, Xmonad, Awesome, Qtile, anything I've ever used, that functionality was just built in. That's just how naturally they function. i3 doesn't naturally function that way. I think it's because of how i3 creates workspaces. Workspaces are created on the fly. They don't exist until you actually start using them. That's why I'm a little confused about swapping workspaces. It's also why I had some problems as far as how i3 does things as far as in the panels. In the i3 bar or in Polybar, what I'm using is it doesn't show all 8 workspaces I created in the config file. It's because all 8 workspaces are not available to you until you actually start using them. So that's a little different too. But overall, I've been using i3 for about 3 days, and I got to tell you, it hasn't been bad. Again, it's a little bit different than what I'm used to, but it just, I got to live in it for about a month. I'll be fine with it. And of course, as always, before I go, this show was made possible by Ansem, Carlos, Chris, Dylan, Leor, Rob, and Tony. They are the producers of the show. They are my highest tiered patrons over on Patreon. Without them, none of this would be possible. Show is also brought to you by all those fine ladies and gentlemen. You see all those names on the screen. They are the supporters of this channel. If you would like to support my work over on Patreon, please do so. You will find me at DistroTube over on Patreon. Peace, guys.